Paradox have ruined trade in the latest patch of Europa Universalis 5. For anyone who doesn't know, EU5 is a sequel of EU4, my most played game on Steam. However, the trade system is a little bit lackluster. EU5 doesn't have this problem. They've succeeded in creating a hugely in-depth trade system, but they've also been quite effective in blowing it up. Yeah. So let's have a look at the patch notes. The problematic article, if you will, is that trade maintenance is now 10 times as big as before. So what's the issue? Why is this completely ruining trade? Well, your trade is now highly unprofitable unless you have some sort of key industry or gigantic surplus or huge deficit in a good that you need to essentially equalize out. And that's still going to be useful, but it's going to be a hell of a lot less income producing as it was before. Yet it still expands your economic base by the same amount. So what does this mean? Events and specific costs like improving stability and legitimacy and prestige, like we do all the time in EU5, are tied to your economic base. Now, if you're artificially increasing your economic base without reaping much reward for it, you're actually losing. So unless you're at 100 prestige, 100 stability, and 100 legitimacy, there is an argument to say it's just not worth trading anymore. Now, luckily, Paradox realized their mistake, and they've quickly released a 1.06 hotfix, essentially reverting these changes to trade expenses, restoring merchant maintenance to its previous levels, and a few other minor bug fixes. However, it just goes to show how volatile trade can be in such a new game. So it's definitely worthwhile investing some time into learning an alternative economic model so you're safe from these swings, or you're just playing a country that has a lot of really strong trade goods that you'd like to utilize, and you don't want to be reliant on other nations and the trade wings. So what does this mean for us, and how can we make the most of this situation? Well, there's no point in over-investing into your burger type industry where you produce valuable trade goods and you try and sell them to neighbouring markets. Castile is a good example for this, because usually they'd be trying to sell their goods around the globe, explore, develop, make some specialised industries, and utilise this advanced type of manufacturing. However, if we're not going to get any profit and actually just lose out by investing so much into our burger type market, then why not just go for RGOs instead? Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of countries are going to struggle with their relative control. They're going to struggle with what goods are available to them. Castile is quite lucky that we have ample salt, which is a high value resource in the early game. We have silver, we have mercury, we have saffron adjacent. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like Bohemia, who has 5 bloody gold provinces. If there's no money to be made through trade, then invest in the good old-fashioned gathering industries. Just to give you an insight into it, let's have a quick look at Bohemia. So I mentioned their gold province. Let's have a look at your control. You have a gold province literally 1 province away from your capital, another 2 provinces away, and 3 in your high control vassals that you can then essentially get full resource for. You've also got several different silver provinces around. You've got gems, and you've got other type of in-demand resources, such as fur, which is obviously in a big shortage at the start of the game in Europe, and simple stuff like iron and copper that is much more relevant as the game goes on. So what is an RGO? An RGO is a resource gathering operation. It's a type of building that's inherent to your local infrastructure. It's not in your building tab, it's in your actual province itself. You have a good in all of your provinces, and a certain limit of how many essentially mines or farming estates that you can make in it. They're staffed by labourers, which is a little bit temperamental because you have to wait for your population to promote to fill the gap, and they don't meet your levies as effectively as a peasant would. So there is a trade-off. You're boosting your economy, but you're weakening your levies, and you'll be bringing in migration from surrounding provinces. So you're potentially weakening other provinces to overinvest in your mining or your highly profitable farming provinces. This strategy of overinvesting into your gathering industries isn't just strong because it avoids the little trade mishap that Paradise has got going on at the moment. It's also because you can stack so many buffs behind it. For example, traditional economy buffs your raw materials output by 20%. So for every RGO that you build, you're getting a 20% buff if you've maxed out that value. Whilst that 10% building cost increase does not affect the cost of your gathering expansion, serfdom then affects the amount you can tax your peasants. Because in EU5, the more money your peasants have, the more they do reinvest in your economy. But it's often in the worst imaginable things you can build in your economy. In one of my England games, my peasants finally had enough money to build their first building. And the first thing they built was a fruit garden that has been unprofitable for the entire game. So why not take as much of their money as possible? You can increase it by 20%, which is a gigantic amount. You also get an additional 10% raw materials output. That's 10% for every single gathering operation you do. And with little drawback, only a little bit of food consumption. And if you're building up your gathering industries, you're going to build up your food as well, because wheat, legumes, fibrous crops, and a lot more produce food, and you can buff that with irrigation. Additionally, land is also incredibly important because not only does it increase the maximum RGO size, so the ability to upgrade your resources, it reduces your proximity cost, and control is the most important mechanic in EU5. If you can't control your provinces, you don't get the reward for your labour, and in this case, your literal labour, as you're gathering all of the resources in your country and you're selling them off. So how do we buff this up further? You use policies and estate privileges. Firstly, instituting agricultural cultivation will help nullify that food production loss that we talked about earlier, but also get you progressing faster and further into serfdom. Additionally, feudal nobility will buff any subjects you've got, and obviously, as we know in EU5, subjects are very, very important to get the most out of the control and the most out of our provinces that we can. This also progresses you up quite far into the traditional economy, which will buff as we spoke earlier. In terms of privileges, the two important ones are nobility-controlled serfdom. It reduces food consumption and progresses you further to serfdom, but surprisingly, free mobility for the common people. If you're highly specialising your gathering industries in your best provinces, such as your silver, your gold provinces, your gems, you're going to have some population issues, especially as the Black Death rolls around. So what you're going to need to do is enable your peasants and labourers to migrate so they can follow where the jobs are. You build the jobs and they will come. This not only will ensure that you get people to work in the right places, but protects you as you go into the Black Death, so you won't be stuck with a huge hole waiting for peasants to promote or even to be born. They could just move around your country and fill the jobs as need be. So to give you a good worked example, this is my Bohemia game. 15 years into the game, we've almost tripled our tax base, despite losing 750,000 people to the Black Death. To demonstrate how built up we've invested into these RGOs, you can navigate to the RGO Builder by heading to the Production tab on the left, picking RGO Builder, and it shows you where you can build the most effective gathering operations in your country. Now, it also shows you the levels in the provinces that you've built up to. And as you can see in this Bohemia game, we've specialised into our highly productive provinces. This is obviously gold provinces, the best resource in the game, silver, fur, and gems. To make this work, you really have to invest hard into your RGOs. However, what's imperative is that you really focus on your control too. As you can see, we've worked hard trying to get as much control over our land provinces as possible. This is helped by the land buff, but also building roads is so important. As you can see, we've got a large, vast road network all around Prague and near to the limits of Bohemia. This allows us to reduce our market access, our proximity cost, and hence increase control, which is directly proportionate to the size of levies and the income we get out of those provinces. In the early game, it's really important to specialise on your best province. So I'd recommend by starting the game encouraging migration to your best goods province. In our case, this is the 10 gold province in Klatovy. It starts 2 out of 8, so it needs some big investment in terms of the gathering and the population to get it there. But it's really worth it, and it's quite close to Prague, which means that you can effectively increase its control. Lastly, a really important mechanic to include is the Parliament mechanic. Why is this useful for RGOs? By calling it, you can expand your RGOs quickly and at cheap cost. For example, through the Expand Forest Exploitation Parliament issue. What this does is this gives you a 33% debuff on your forestry cost. So any lumber RGO you make will be a third cheaper and made at 20% of the time, and you get 2 for free. So save up and make the most of them, really. So thank you for watching. I do hope I've spread some light into the shit show that's going on at Paradox at the moment, but how you can overcome it and utilise those skills to beat your friends in EU5. If you've liked the video, please like and subscribe. Everything helps, especially on such a new channel. And do let me know in the comments what you think I can do better, as I'm still new to this too. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.